Let's get straight to it. Rituals are everywhere. Weddings, funerals, birthdays, graduations, these are all rituals, even if they don't involve religion. But when it comes to religion, rituals seem to take on a completely different level of importance. Why is that? Why do people pray, fast, light candles, bow, chant, or circle sacred sites? And what does any of it have to do with belief in a higher power? Rituals aren't just actions, they're symbols. They're physical acts that point to something much bigger than what's happening in the moment. Think about a simple act like lighting a candle. To someone outside the tradition, it's just wax and fire. But to someone participating, it could represent the presence of the divine, a prayer for hope, or even a connection to loved ones who've passed. Rituals take the abstract, the spiritual, the emotional, the eternal, and make it concrete. And that's powerful. Here's the thing: humans are wired for ritual. It's not just something we learn, it's something we instinctively do. Think about it. When you're nervous, you might pace or tap your fingers, a kind of personal ritual to release tension. When you celebrate a victory, you might high-five your friends or pop a bottle of champagne. These actions give structure to our emotions. They make the invisible, our joy, fear, or connection, visible. Religious rituals do the same thing, but on a much grander scale. Now let's talk about the role rituals play in religion. At their core, religious rituals are about bridging two worlds: the everyday world we live in and the sacred world we believe in. They create a space where the divine feels present, where something beyond the ordinary feels real. Whether it's kneeling in prayer, singing hymns, or taking communion, these acts are like doorways, ways to step into a realm that feels bigger than ourselves.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
But here's the real question: are rituals just about expressing belief, or do they actually shape belief? Think about this for a second. If you pray every day, even when you're not sure anyone's listening, does the act of praying start to create a sense of connection? Or take fasting, it's not just about the act of not eating. It's about discipline, sacrifice, and a deeper focus on what really matters. In many ways, rituals don't just reflect faith, they build it. And that brings us to another key point: community. Rituals aren't just personal, they're deeply communal. When people gather to celebrate a religious festival, mourn a loss, or worship together, they're creating a shared experience. That sense of unity, of being part of something bigger than yourself, is one of the most powerful things about rituals. It's not just about you and the divine, it's about you, the divine, and everyone around you. But let's not ignore the elephant in the room. Some people see rituals as empty gestures, meaningless acts that people do out of habit rather than genuine belief. And to be fair, that can happen. Anyone who's ever sat through a ceremony they didn't fully understand or believe in knows that rituals can feel hollow at times. But does that mean they're useless? Or does it mean that the meaning of a ritual isn't fixed, it's something we bring to it? Let me ask you this: if you stopped participating in rituals, what would you lose? Would it just be the actions, or would it be the deeper sense of connection they create? And if rituals do have the power to shape our beliefs, what does that say about how we use them or how seriously we take them? Rituals aren't just about actions, they're about patterns. They create a rhythm in life, a sense of order amidst chaos. And in religion, this rhythm isn't random. It's designed to align us with something greater than ourselves, whether that's God, the universe, or a sense of ultimate truth. But how exactly do these patterns work? And why are they so essential to the way we experience faith? Think about how rituals are tied to time. In almost every religion, rituals are connected to specific moments in the day, week, or year. Prayer at sunrise, fasting during a holy month, festivals marking the changing seasons. These rituals turn time itself into something sacred. They remind us that life isn't just a series of random events. It has meaning, direction, and purpose. Religious rituals anchor us in that meaning, even when everything else feels uncertain. But rituals aren't just about marking time, they're also about transformation. When you step into a ritual, you're not just going through the motions. You're stepping into a process that changes you. Take something like baptism. On the surface, it's just water. But for the person being baptized, it's a profound moment of renewal, a symbol of washing away the old and stepping into a new identity. And that's the power of rituals. They take ordinary actions and infuse them with extraordinary meaning. Now let's get practical. Why do rituals work? What is it about these repetitive actions that makes them so impactful? The answer lies in human psychology. When we repeat an action, it becomes ingrained. It starts to shape how we think and feel. That's why rituals are often so physical: kneeling, bowing, lighting candles, offering gifts. These actions engage the body, and in doing so, they engage the mind and spirit. They create a full-body experience of faith, something that words alone can't achieve. But there's another layer to this: rituals create connection. They connect us to others, to ourselves, and to something beyond. Think about communal rituals like singing hymns or sharing a meal. Everyone participates, everyone contributes, and everyone feels the same moment together. That kind of unity is rare, and it's one of the reasons rituals have such staying power. They remind us that we're not alone, that we're part of a larger story. Of course, not all rituals are the same. Some are deeply personal prayers whispered in solitude, private acts of devotion. Others are massive public spectacles, processions, pilgrimages, ceremonies attended by thousands. But they all share one thing: they're a bridge. A way to connect the physical world with the spiritual. A way to turn belief into something tangible, something you can see, hear, and feel. But here's where things get complicated. Rituals are powerful, but they're not always positive. Throughout history, rituals have been used to exclude, control, and divide. Think about how rituals can enforce hierarchy: who gets to lead the prayer, who sits where in a temple, who's allowed to participate, and who isn't. In these cases, rituals can become tools of power, used to reinforce social or religious norms that marginalize certain groups. And yet, rituals also have the power to resist and transform. Think about movements for justice and equality that have used rituals to challenge the status quo: marches, vigils, symbolic acts of protest. These rituals turn the sacred patterns of religion into tools for change, proving that rituals aren't static. They can evolve, adapt, and take on new meanings. This brings us to a crucial question: how do we decide which rituals to keep, which to change, and which to let go? Are rituals timeless, or do they need to evolve to stay relevant? And what happens when a ritual loses its meaning? Do we abandon it, or do we try to rediscover what made it sacred in the first place? You don't need to step inside a church, mosque, or temple to see them. Look at graduations, national holidays, or even something as simple as a handshake. These are rituals, stripped of religious meaning but still rich in symbolism. So the big question is, what happens to rituals in a world that's becoming less overtly religious? Can they thrive on their own, or do they need religion to survive? First, let's think about why rituals persist even outside of religion. It's because they serve a fundamental human need, the need for meaning, structure, and connection. Religion gave rituals their depth, linking them to something sacred. But even when that sacred context fades, the emotional and social power of rituals remains. A wedding, for instance, might not involve prayers or blessings, but it's still a deeply symbolic act of union and commitment. People crave these moments, these actions that make life feel bigger than just the day-to-day grind. But here's the thing: without religion, rituals often become more personalized. Instead of following a universal script, people create their own. Think about how individuals and families invent their own traditions: Friday game nights, yearly vacations, personal ways of celebrating milestones. These rituals might not be tied to the divine, but they still serve the same purpose: bringing people together, marking time, and adding significance to life's events. At the same time, rituals in the modern world are increasingly tied to cultural or national identity. Think of holidays like Thanksgiving or the 4th of July in the United States. These are secular rituals, but they're still full of meaning, gratitude, community, celebration. They create a sense of belonging, a shared experience that connects people, even if it's not rooted in religion. But here's where it gets tricky. When rituals lose their religious foundation, do they lose something essential? Religion often gave rituals their weight, their sense of timelessness. Without that, do they risk becoming shallow or purely symbolic? Think about how some traditions start to feel hollow when their deeper meaning fades. Lighting a candle might feel comforting, but does it carry the same power if it's no longer tied to prayer or meditation? This raises a bigger question: what happens when we try to replace religious rituals with purely rational or practical ones? Modern life is full of efficiency and logic, but it often lacks the sense of awe and mystery that rituals once provided. Can you really recreate that sense of sacredness in a completely secular context? Or is there something about rituals that needs a touch of the transcendent to truly resonate? Let's not forget the role of technology in all this. The digital world has created its own kinds of rituals: scrolling through social media, sharing memes, live streaming events. These acts are repetitive, communal, and meaningful in their own way. But do they carry the same depth as traditional rituals? Or are they more like placeholders, offering connection but without the deeper grounding that rituals once had? There's another side to this, too: the growing interest in mindfulness, yoga, and meditation. These practices often borrow elements from religious traditions but frame them in a secular way. People light incense, chant, or follow guided meditations not because they're tied to a specific faith, but because they bring a sense of calm, focus, or connection. These are modern rituals, reshaped to fit a world that values spirituality without necessarily being religious. But here's where we hit a paradox. Rituals in the modern world seem to thrive best when they borrow from the past. Even the most secular ceremonies often have roots in religious traditions. A wedding might skip the prayers, but it still echoes ancient rituals of union and blessing. A mindfulness practice might avoid talking about gods, but it's still shaped by centuries-old spiritual practices. This suggests something profound. Even when we try to move beyond religion, we're still drawn to its patterns, its symbols, its sense of the sacred. So what does all this mean for the future of rituals? Can they stand on their own, or will they always need some connection to the sacred, even if it's not tied to traditional religion? And if we're creating new rituals, what should they look like? Should they focus on connection, on mindfulness, on celebrating life's moments, or on something entirely different. Rituals are like the glue holding together the intangible parts of life. Even when the world shifts, when religions evolve, when cultures change, when technology accelerates everything, rituals remain. But here's the twist: they don't stay the same. They evolve too, and that evolution raises some profound questions about what they mean to us and how they shape the world we're building. Let's get personal for a moment. Look at your own life. Chances are, even if you don't think of yourself as religious, you still have rituals. Maybe it's the way you start your mornings, the routines that bring comfort, or the small acts of gratitude that help you feel grounded. These aren't grand ceremonies or ancient traditions, but they serve the same purpose. They give structure to your day and meaning to your actions. They remind you that even in a chaotic world, there are things worth holding on to. But here's where it gets interesting: rituals don't just connect us to the present, they connect us to the past and the future. When you participate in a ritual, you're stepping into a pattern that has been repeated by countless others before you. It's like you're tapping into a thread that runs through generations, and that's powerful. Even in a secular world, people are still drawn to that sense of continuity. It's why traditions persist, even when their original context fades. At the same time, rituals are a way of imagining the future. They're aspirational. A graduation ceremony isn't just about celebrating what you've achieved, it's about stepping into the next chapter of your life. A wedding isn't just about love in the moment, it's about the promise of building a future together. Rituals make the future feel tangible, even if it's uncertain. But let's not ignore the complexity here. Modern rituals face challenges that traditional ones didn't. In a world that values efficiency, individuality, and skepticism, rituals can feel unnecessary or even awkward. Why perform a ceremony when you can just get straight to the point? Why follow a script when you can do things your own way? These are the questions people are asking, and they're reshaping how rituals are practiced, or whether they're practiced at all. Still, even as people question the value of rituals, they keep creating new ones. Think about how people gather for online gaming tournaments, or how fans celebrate their favorite sports teams, or how communities come together for protests or vigils. These are rituals, even if they don't look like the ones in ancient temples or churches. They show that the human need for shared meaning and connection doesn't go away, it just finds new forms. Here's the takeaway: rituals are adaptable. They can survive outside of religion because they're deeply tied to who we are as people. But whether they're tied to faith, culture, or personal habits, their power comes from the meaning we give them. Without meaning, rituals become empty gestures. With meaning, they become transformative. So, what's the role of rituals in a world that's constantly changing? They remind us to pause, to reflect, to connect. They show us that even in the midst of chaos, there are ways to create order and purpose. They challenge us to think about what matters most and how we express that in our actions. And whether we're lighting a candle, attending a concert, or simply saying thank you, rituals help us make sense of the world and ourselves.